Welcome to the Art Coaching Club podcast. I'm your host, Haley Price, artist, owner of the online art gallery, The Scouted Studio, and business coach for artists. With experience starting and running my own art business, growing an online art gallery, and coaching artists internationally on how to grow their careers, I've learned the art world inside and out. I've made all of the mistakes so you don't have to. Every episode will be a little bit different, but I promise that each week I will show you how to tackle your biggest business challenges so you can get back in the studio doing what you love. Now let's get into it.
So my name is Kathleen Jones. I am a painter that lives in Macon, Georgia. I've been painting full time. I'm going into my 7th year right now. Before that, I was a high school art teacher for a few years. And
That's great. Tell us a little bit about your work, your style, and I want to get into sort of the backstory, but first maybe just describe your work.
so my work, it's funny because I feel like I've never gotten very good at this, even though I am asked this question a lot. I would say my work is abstracted, maybe a little surrealist still life. I really like color. I really like objects floating in space. I use a lot of objects, patterns, things from my life and from like places I visit. And I think a lot of it has developed because I draw on my phone, like with my finger.
Yeah.
Because I'll just get an idea or I'll see something that'll click in for me. And I don't want to forget it. So I just have this free app in my phone called Brushes Redux. And I just draw and sketch and then I paint from those. And so I feel like that digital layer actually has had a lot to do with why I paint the way I paint now.
That's a really interesting process. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, it's fun.
Context. I've been following you for a while. I really love your work. And I think you have such an interesting voice and style and use of color. And I love that it's almost like a spin on the still life I could see, but it's so in your own way. And so I really love it. It's something you've definitely carved out your own niche for. And I think you've made a name for yourself because of that.
Thank you. I think like all artists, I used to paint very realistically and get very dug into my paintings, and it just wasn't fun for me. And so I would say since I started doing this full time, probably my biggest thing is just trying to not be perfect, to mess up almost on purpose sometimes, to lean into the weird ways that I naturally make marks. So that's still a challenge though.
How did you transition from painting really realistically? Or maybe a better question is, how did you develop this style and this process for how you create?
Yeah, a lot of in school for art, which I do. I have my BFA. I went for art education. So I got to take a lot of studio classes with other BFA students. And then I had also education classes. They always say you have to learn all the rules and then you have to unlearn all those rules and break them and see what's fun. And so coming out of college, I think a lot of it was just I was really bored at looking at something and just trying to paint it like that. And so a lot of experimentation, a lot of really ugly paintings, honestly, a lot of trying different media and techniques. Like I used to embed a lot of like chair caning and rattan and like physical things onto the canvas. And also just, like sometimes I think it's really important to go in the studio, take a canvas that maybe is messed up or something and just do whatever you want. And it'll probably be really ugly and get painted over, but I feel like it's been important for me to.
I think that's so true. And I think it's something we don't talk about enough is like our ugly work. I feel like I just created 2 paintings and this is not about me, but it's relating, that I absolutely love. But it's so funny because they're painted over 4 layers of just trash.
Absolutely.
It's like when you finally stop thinking about it and I just painted something totally different that I was like, oh, this is lovely.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, everyone always tells me, I'm sure you get this too. I could never do that. I can't be creative. I would mess it up. And I was like, I mess it up all the time. That's fine. People are afraid to make a mistake. And I think you just got to get over that.
Yeah. Speaking of messing it up and then figuring it out, when did you start to figure out both internally, but also get that external validation of, okay, this is my voice and people are resonating with it?
Yeah. I think that having the opportunity to do my first solo show, like a large body of work that felt cohesive, was probably my learning experience for kind of, okay, because it used to just be like I would come up with sketches or I would have a vision of something and I would make the paintings I wanted to make, but they didn't necessarily go together. I want to be careful of that too, because I feel like still in a lot of ways my work could be a lot more cohesive, but it challenged me to say, okay, I need to make 20 paintings that at the very least feel like they belong in the same room together. There's some sort of like dialogue. And also because I was doing like an artist statement, like I knew I was going to have to talk about the work, it really made me think, okay, I probably should try to verbalize why I'm using these patterns, these shapes.
Right.
Because in my head, I'm like, oh, it's obvious, but nobody else, thankfully, nobody else is up here in my head. So I had to learn how to communicate it better.
I feel like that's still a challenge for a lot of us. Like, I think sometimes things are so clear in my head, or you're probably the same way. I'm just such a visual person. Like, I think
Yeah.
in colors and textures, and I'm like, this goes together because it just does. It
Yeah.
makes sense in my mind, but then to put that into words, it's really difficult. And it's difficult to make it sound as good as it makes sense in your head. And
Yeah.
so, I definitely understand that. Can you talk about how you, because I know you transitioned obviously from another job into being an artist. Like, what did that transition look like? And then how did you work to actually grow the art career?
Yeah. So the transition was basically just a free fall off of a
Love
cliff.
it.
I had been teaching high school art for 3 years. I got married. My now ex-husband, shout out Brian, we're still friends. We got married. We moved to Macon, where I live now, which was his hometown. And we've decided together that I wasn't going to teach anymore. But then when we made the move, I just started to get very nervous about just our financial security. We wanted to buy a house. And so I took a teaching position and I probably just should not have. Like, I was very done with it. But I took this teaching position. I was very thankful for it. And so I was teaching, and like on my planning periods, I was making work and putting it on Instagram. And it was still very, I didn't have a ton of followers. There were some people being like, oh, that's weird. That's cool. And so that, like after Christmas break, we had to tell our principal if we were going to renew for the next year. Like they want to go ahead and know early. And I went home and talked to Brian and was like, I really don't want to go back, but I don't have a plan yet. Are you cool with this? And luckily he was. He had a great job. And so I told him I wasn't coming back. I applied to the Emerging Artist Show at Ann Irwin Fine Art in Atlanta and just crossed my fingers. I got into that show with a wonderful group of artists, many of whom are now like my good friends. And the paintings that I sent for that show sold. And so they wanted to keep me on. And then it just really snowballed from there. And people are like, "How do you grow?" And I'm probably not the best person to ask because I had a lot of people just reach out to me, like in Wonder, which I do think actually Wonder is a wonderful platform for artists starting off. Molly is great to work with.
Mhm.
My gallery in Charleston, Meyer Vogel, who I've been with,
Love Meyer Vogel. I love both of them.
the best people in the world. But it was just like I started to realize, okay, people have heard of you now. So if you continue making art consistently and push yourself, then the right people will find, like we just found each other. It was very organic. So,
That makes sense. And I think what's interesting about your story versus some of the other artists I talked to is we're doing something else and you found your voice and like your style, to use that word first.
yeah.
And then obviously you were doing the work to get your name out there, but really people were coming to you. Whereas I feel like a lot of artists are trying to do it all at once. And I do think when you have that breathing room to really figure out what you want to create and how you want to create, it's
Yeah.
so much easier to grow. And it is a game of patience. And that's hard depending on like your situation and if you're already a full-time artist and things like that. But that
Yeah.
is one benefit of actually having another job, I feel like, before you go jump in feet first, because you can really figure out what you personally want to create and what resonates, and then more opportunities start to just come to you.
Yeah. When Ann Irwin still owned Ann Irwin, she
Mhm.
took a small group of us. She took us to visit some other galleries in Atlanta that she was friends with. And we went to Timothy Two Gallery and we were speaking with him. And he was like, the best art you're ever going to make is art that you are free to make because there's no financial pressure on you. He said a lot of these artists either have already established themselves in some way or they have a spouse that makes enough money. But he said when you have the financial pressure on you, it's always going to hinder your creative process. And so, like you said, like me having a job and painting, and I didn't have that pressure on me, I think was very helpful.
Yeah. Can you talk about how you feel now? Because obviously it is your job. So how do you
Yeah.
manage that?
The last 2 years have been very different than the first several years of my career. And so yeah, I do feel like I'm coming out on the other side of it right now, but I definitely, there was a wake up call for me where it was like, okay, it's not always going to be just easy breezy, no
Right.
big deal. I got a divorce a few years ago. And so I am now like, I support myself fully. And so with that alone, it was just a lot of learning. I didn't realize how much stuff I just didn't worry about that now I'm like, oh, that is my responsibility as well. Awesome. I think you just have to be willing to pivot and try things. And I have gotten part-time jobs off and on when I've needed them several times throughout the years. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You just do what you have to do. I figured out I've sold prints for a couple years now, and I've tried it several different ways. And I think I've finally honed in a way that works well for me with selling prints. I think that it's can be a really good idea to find another stream of income that's not dependent upon your constant production because that's just so creatively exhausting. Commissions are very important. I like to do 1 to 2 commissions, like a quarter, and taking the deposit up front, things like that. You just learn different things that you can do to give yourself a little more stability. And then I think the other side of it is just practicing financial discipline, which is so hard for me. But it's like you have to plan, like you have to save and plan and set aside your tax money and you just have to know that some months are going to be slower than others and try to be ready for that as best you can.
Yeah, and it's so hard because I feel like I don't want to generalize, but I do feel like as creatives, we're not the ones that like want to be focusing on all the financial.
No.
That's not fun. I think a lot of people don't really want to think about taxes, but I think when you work for yourself, it's like more important than most other careers. Like we're not getting a steady paycheck, so you have to plan out, all right, if I have this commission lined up, what does this mean for kind of the next few months and blah blah blah. But it's stressful, but I think it is a good way to kind of think differently about the process. But I love what you mentioned too about part-time jobs. I've
Mhm.
had plenty and I do think it relates back to that idea of sometimes it takes the pressure off your work. And
Yeah.
also sometimes you just need to get out of the studio or do what you have to do to allow the work to keep being produced. And I think it's just nice to hear that because I'm sure a lot of people follow you and maybe they see follower counts or they see the amazing galleries you've been in and it's, oh, she's also had to take part-time work or chosen to take part-time work. And I think that's really nice to hear.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you got to be scrappy. And also, the other side of it for me, I've gotten a lot more introverted as I've gotten older, but like I'm an extrovert. I love people. I get energized from being around people. And now that, especially now that my studio is at home again, it's not outside of my house, like being an artist can be a very isolating job. So to have a part-time job where like a couple nights a week you go work at a bar or a Pilates studio and you can have
Yeah.
that community is it fills your cup in more ways than one.
I was actually talking this morning. I go to Pure Bar across the street, and the girl has an incredible company. She has like those tufted rugs and wall hangings and stuff. And she works at the Pure Bar. And I used to do that too. I used to work at a bar studio, like at the front desk. I was not qualified to teach. But while I was building up different businesses, and it's for that same reason. I am definitely like, I need my time alone, but I also need interaction. And when you're working alone behind a screen or even painting like in your own house, you're just in your own head all the time. And sometimes you just got to get out and talk to people.
Yeah.
And that can be as another job or as even just a couple hours a week doing something like working at Pure Bar.
Yeah, yeah. Or even, okay, so if you don't need the extra money, then volunteer, be on a board of
Really?
something that's important to you. You know what I mean? Just,
Yeah.
yeah. I think if art consumes your whole life, then that's a very good recipe to just hate making art.
And I think creativity comes from getting out in the world. Like, ironically, when I spend way too much time in the studio, I'm just stifled. How do
Yes.
you stay inspired?
Yeah, exactly that. I need to turn my brain off, get out of my house, go live life. This past weekend, I went down to Live Oak, Florida to like a music festival and
Mm.
camped with my friends. I haven't been down there since probably I was in college. And yeah, just have a different experience outside of my day to day, see different people, see different places, be in nature. I'm very lucky. My godmother, who is an artist, lives in France part time, and she's hosted a lot of painting workshops over the years. So like anytime she wants me to come over and assist her in the studio and paint, like I'm always going to try to say yes because that's such it art creatively just refills your batteries.
Yeah, I mean, if she ever needs like extra set of hands, feel free to.
We just had a call the other day about this summer.
I'm like, I will wash brushes. I will. I'll
It's not
sweep
even
the
that. I
floors.
was
I don't
washing
care.
dishes and I
Yeah,
was
I'm
like
like,
happy
there's
as a
nothing. I will
clam.
do anything.
Yeah, I'm like, yes, I
Um,
would love to wash your dishes.
truly. That's amazing. I kind of want to pivot and talk a little bit about what does a day in the life look like for you? Like we've talked about how you balance, I guess, the creativity and like the mental side of things, but how do you actually structure like a day or a week to kind of balance business and art?
So I'm not great at this, especially now that I live by myself and there's no one being like, "Hey girl, when's the last time you walked in your studio?" I probably feel more creative in the morning, and that's also when my studio gets better sunlight. So I am normally like anytime any painting, creativity work, I try to get in the studio in the morning. Get up, have coffee, exercise my dogs so that they will leave me alone, which they don't. We try. And then I like to go ahead and get in there, put on some music, open the back door. I'm not really one to paint for really long stretches of time. I have ADHD. I go into the zone and then I come out of the zone and then I'm like, okay, what? So yeah, normally like morning painting, a lunch break, maybe a TV break. Afternoon, I try to do more admin if I have to, like place orders, answer emails, work on commission, sketches, correspondence, packing, shipping, anything like that. I also, because my studio's in my house and I have two dogs, like cleaning has to fit in there pretty much every day because I just would be drowning in dog hair. If you own original paintings of mine, it probably has dog hair in it, which is lucky. So
And what kind of dogs do you have?
I have two Australian blue heelers.
Oh, so amazing. Yeah,
They're
I have
amazing,
a
but
dog
they're
too,
high
so I
maintenance.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lab, so also not quite as high
Oh,
of energy, but
so
energy because he's a puppy and then like just fur
hmm.
everywhere.
Yeah. So just like a mixture of cleaning. If I'm having a really good studio day, some days like it just flows. I'm just in a great mood. Then I'll go back in there in the afternoon and kind of pick back up and play around. But if I haven't started painting by lunchtime, I'm probably not going to.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That's helpful to hear. I think that's interesting. I do feel like most of the people I talk to, it's like mornings or their jam. And it's also interesting how much people, or maybe it's not interesting because everyone that listening is mainly artists, but like how much time people spend not painting, like how much there's other stuff that has to be done. And
Yeah.
it's not, oh, you're an artist, you get to paint all day. No, that is not true.
Mhm. No, yeah, you don't get to because there's so much other stuff to be done. But then also, like I said, like that's just not how my flow works. Like I know so many artists that I respect that have a very strict, very regimented studio schedule. They have to pick up a paintbrush every day of the week. And I wish I was like that. I have so much respect for that. But when I try to force it like that, I end up making really bad work, not like in the fun, oh, a happy accident.
Right.
I can't force it. So.
It's definitely a personality thing to like how it works for you. Can you touch on marketing? So I know you've had people reach out to you, but just also what has your strategy been with like Instagram and word of mouth and email and all these different things? Like how have you
Yeah.
thought about growing your name and your art?
I have I've tried a lot of different things. Like, as in everything in this business, I've tried a lot of different things. Early in my career, I did work with some like business coaches that specialized in like creative business. And I feel like at the time that was very helpful for me about how to build your own brand that feels true to you and not just try to mimic somebody else, and how to be unafraid to just put it out there. And that stuff was really helpful. I used to make myself post on Instagram every day at 7 a.m. because that's what you were supposed to do. Like, then it was paid ads, which I've never ever had luck with paid ads. For me, even they don't make sense to me for art or for my art, but I know that some people like that's a very important tool. I think I've gotten to the place now where I did focus for a while on building my email list, and I do think that's very important because I've heard it put, you don't own the real estate space that you occupy on a social media platform. You could
Right.
be banned or hacked, or Instagram could cease to exist one day. We don't know. And like you would just lose all those people. But your email list, you have those contacts. And so I do try, I'm not a regular email list person, which I actually think my subscribers maybe appreciate because they don't like being inundated with stuff. But if I am releasing a new print or if I have a new body of work coming out, at a gallery, I like to send an email. I like to incentivize by if I do a print release or a paper release, like email list always gets first dibs because they're more, oh, just a next level of commitment if we want to keep in touch. For a while, I was like, I don't think Instagram is even worth it anymore because there's so much to keep up with and trending reels, audios, and I just was like, I
Yeah.
don't care. Um, I have found that if I post less, but post what actually I want to post about and what feels fun, that things just are better in general. I've had very slow growth on Instagram. Like I just got over 9,000 followers like last week. And I just like, I guess I used to worry about the number a lot and now I don't worry about it. I would rather have people following me because they actually are interested in my work than people who followed me because they like entered a giveaway.
And I feel like
Yeah.
most people are at that point now too, because Instagram is so just wishy-washy and changes all the time. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are fed up with it. And so I do think we've reached this point, or I'm trying to hammer home that we're here, that the numbers really don't matter as much, and posting every day doesn't matter as much. Like that
No.
used to be like the more you post and like consistency and all this. And now I actually perform better if I just maybe
Yeah.
don't post as often.
I think it backfires. Yeah, when I was posting every day, I felt like I could just feel the collective being like, "Oh, we get it. You make paintings." Shh.
Yeah, but that used to be what they told you to do, and it worked, I
Yeah.
guess, in terms of engagement for a while, and now it's the opposite, which I'm totally okay with.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, one day I used to have a studio assistant and she would help me with social media content and she was like younger and cooler. And one day I hope to have her or someone like her back. But for now, it's like, I'm not ready to post every morning when I wake up and I don't really want to be.
And you don't need to be, which is fine.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what have been some successful moments for you up to this point?
I think I think the first couple years of my career I'm proud of because I'm actually going to single in on my first solo show because that was like in my head that was a big mile marker for me. I was like I really want a solo show. And I'd been at Anne Irwin for a little while and this isn't necessarily how you get a solo show, but it did work for me. I just emailed Emily, who's now the owner, a bunch of sketches, and I said, "Hey, I think this work is good, and I would like a solo show."
I love it.
And she said, "Okay." She was like, "We're gonna give it to you in July, the slowest month, but if you want it, you got it. Let's see." And I just really pushed myself to try to make that a strong body of work, and it went well. And it was during COVID; it sold very well. And then after that, it was like you don't really have to ask anymore. You know what I mean? But just
Right.
being brave enough to be like, hey, I'm ready. Tap me, put me in, coach.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
having the confidence in your own work too, to be like, this is good. This is good enough for a solo show. I think that's a huge step just in and of itself.
You know what's the funniest part about that show though is the sketches that I sent her. None of that work ended up in the show. It all completely
Really.
changed. But
Hey,
whatever.
it opened the door.
Yeah, it worked out.
Are you still with Anne Irwin?
Yeah.
I love that gallery.
Yeah, they're wonderful. That's my longest gallery relationship. Ann Irwin and Meyer Vogel in Charleston are just my tried and true.
Yeah.
They've been there for all the ups and downs. They're
I'm
great.
from Atlanta, so I did the emerging artist show, I think the year after you, because I remember
Oh.
seeing a photo with all the artists and I was like, oh my gosh, they're all friends. This looks so fun.
Yes, that's how I met Kit and Allison, who became two of my closest friends. We
Uh-huh.
all got into that show and we had found each other on Instagram before. Art crush. Oh, she's so cool. Her work's so cool.
Yeah.
And then we went to the opening, which, if you remember before COVID, the opening used to be huge, like wall to wall, just
You
packed
couldn't
in like
move.
sardines.
Yeah.
And we just found each other in the crowd. And yeah, that was
Yeah.
that. Very good
It's
friends.
amazing. But yeah, no, this is totally like lifting the curtain. But I remember seeing that group of y'all or on maybe it was maybe the year before or something like that, and being like, oh my gosh, same thing, like Art Crush, they're so cool. They're doing this show. Because I do feel like, I don't know, I'm sure other artists can relate. You see these artists on Instagram, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be friends with them.
Yes,
Which is
that's
so
how it
fun.
starts. I saw Teal Duncan's work and I
Mm.
was still teaching, and I was like, wait, like she's just an artist. That's just her job. What? And I remember just being like, oh my God, somebody's doing it. And then she actually was one of the first people to purchase one of my paintings when I started in Charleston, which I was like, what? And it's been great to get to know her. She's taken calls with me before when I had to ask her some like career questions. So kind. And it's just like funny to go from looking up to her to being like, oh, I know her kind of.
Yeah, she definitely paved the way just because she was one of the first people on Instagram. So I think she paved the way for this new age of artists, not being solely dependent on galleries. And so I feel like she is such a household name for artists that are really successful. I mean, and she deserves it. She's so talented.
She does. She's talented and she's just kind. She's generous with her time. It's she would have been very much within her rights to say, no, I'm not going to get on a call with you to talk about, to help you with your career, but she didn't do that. I always try to pay that forward too. If an artist reaches out and wants to have a coffee or talk about things, like I am always open to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Those are some great successful moments. What are a couple of challenges that you've had to work through over
Yeah.
the years?
Definitely, I would say one would be learning how to do commissions and work with commission clients the best way that works for me. There's a lot of unknowns that pop up. I definitely learned about taking a deposit up front, setting very clear expectations about time limit, when you can make changes, like when we get past the point of making a lot of changes, how drastic the changes are going to be, things like that. I think in the last year, I've maybe learned I need to add a policy where there's like a time frame also for the collector, which I've never had before, but I've had so many people that, or not so many, but I've had a few commission clients in the past year that would put down their deposit and then 6 months later they haven't even sent me images to start on the sketches, which is it's fine, but like the business side of me is okay, I was planning on this to be a Q1 commission and now this has turned into a Q3 commission.
Right. It's harder for your
Um,
planning and time
yeah.
management too, I'm sure.
Yes. Also, like I said, just pivoting. There have definitely been periods where I've gotten either to a place with a gallery where we weren't a great fit for one reason or another, or like with prints, like for a while last year, my print shop just, there was no point. Like I wasn't getting a lot of print orders. It was very labor intensive on my side. So I figured out that if I kept it closed and just opened it a few times a year for a short amount of time, that way, I would get all the orders in at one time, which is easier for my print shop as well. And it's an easier thing to plan than just like a slow trickle.
Right.
I did sell works on paper on my website for a while, but then that kind of same thing, it just became too stressful and not maybe the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So I don't really do that anymore. And maybe one day that'll change. But I think just figuring out, okay, this actually isn't working for me anymore. And I know that I feel like I should be doing it. It's like what you're supposed to do, but you
Yeah,
don't
but I think
have to
that's
do anything.
right. And that's what's so nice to hear because I think a lot of times other artists, they do their collection launches all the time and the paper and the this and the that and it's great and prints and but I do think there's a way that works for you versus a way that works for everyone.
Mhm.
And I do think the mistake a lot of people make is like burning themselves out because they're working on a painting and then a print order comes in and then they have to package a big paper piece. And it luckily when you only launch things at certain times, like the prints, or you put boundaries on certain things, you're not having those stressors that pull you away from what you need to be doing.
Yeah, boundaries, self-motivation, and yeah, just some play, yeah, like making your life easier, all those things. I feel like I used to feel like I needed to be very rigid. I only sell works on canvas through galleries, and I only sell paper pieces through my website, and like I only do X and Y and Z. And it's like those things ebb and flow with time, and you can't be like, but this is how I do it. Like, maybe not anymore.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like if you're going to do this for the long term, things are going to evolve and usually for the better. So that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were looking back and starting your art career today, is there anything you would do differently or change?
That's a good question. I think that I would have been, honestly, I probably wouldn't change anything because I'm very happy with where I am right now. I know that there were times when I first started showing with galleries where I had a lot of opportunities to be in shows and with galleries. And there was a time I was represented by, I think, 5 galleries at once. That's too many. That
Yeah.
was way too many. That's a very hard workload to keep up with. And so I definitely had to learn like where my sweet spot is as far as representation. Because if you have 5 galleries who are going to want work from you a couple times a year periodically, you're just always painting to catch up. And so, like, sometimes less is more, and being a little bit more just like, this is an incredible gallery. I'm so honored that they asked me to show with them, but I just can't, I don't have the capacity right now. It was hard to learn to say no.
Yeah, definitely. And a
Yeah.
good problem to have, but actually harder because it's harder to manage.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And there are also times where it has felt like nobody's interested in my work, and everything ebbs and flows.
Exactly. What do you see next for your business? What's on the horizon for the rest of this year?
The rest of this year, I want to slow down. I don't have as many shows on the books this year, which I like. I'm trying to get myself more into a daily practice where I'm going in and making work every day just because I want to and making whatever I want to instead of being like, okay, I'm working on a plates collection, so I have to go paint plates. I just want to be working consistently, but on whatever I want. I am going to try to maybe go to France again this summer to study with my godmother. She does a lot of like en plein air painting,
Yeah.
and she does a lot more like realism, and that is very hard. But learning to paint that way has really helped me in the way I paint now. So to maybe go and sharpen those skills and learn,
Yeah.
I think this year is a learning year for me. I also really want to experiment with like silk screen printing again. Yeah, this year we're just making art, and all the rest will fall into place.
I love it. This is great. I love to conclude every episode with a lesson or a tip or an app or a book, something that's really it's really open-ended. Something that's really helped you in your art career that you could pass along to other creatives.
Ooh, okay. So the app I use is, like I said, Brushes Redux. It's free. David Hockney uses it and has actually come out with some really cool digital work on it. I can't recommend that enough. But yes, a sketchbook. Carrying a sketchbook is awesome, but you always have your phone on you. We all always have our phone on us, and it is so easy to just jot down. So that's probably my app. And then honestly, just to be yourself, to do it the way that feels best to you. I think I wasted a lot of time trying to mimic other artists that I saw and looked up to, not their work. Obviously, that should go without saying. Don't
Right.
mimic another artist's work, but just to make my career fit into the mold of their career. And it's like we talked about with social media or anything, like you just have to let all that go. I am never dressed cute to paint. I look like a bridge troll in the studio. And so I used to be like, oh, I don't want to shoot content because I don't look cute. But like, I am not cute when I paint. That's not who I am. And just forge your own path. Like people respond more to authenticity and being genuine and being a real human than they do being picture perfect all the time.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for your time. Can you share just a little bit about you, a little bit about where people can find you? So your website, social media, any of that stuff.
Yes, so my website is www.kath.studio. There's no com, it's .studio. My Instagram is underscore Kath Jones. And you can find my work at Ann Irwin Fine Art in Atlanta and Myra Vogel Gallery in Charleston. And I am about to send work to a new gallery, Shane Gallery in Charlotte in April. So if you're in any of those places, you should stop by and say hey.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm in Charleston. So I go to Meyer Vogel all the time. I love it there.
I love it there too.
So great. Thank you so much. This was so fun and it was so nice to get to meet you.
I know, it was great to get to meet you too. Thank you for having me. It was
Of
fun.
course. If you ever end up in Charleston, let me know if you're dropping off art or anything and we can get coffee.